It has been 20 years since WCW died. Now, those last couple of years were a bit of a rough ride. If you were around, you know you would turn on World Championship Wrestling. And honestly, a pineapple could have walked out through the entrance curtain and gone, oh, I'm the pineapple, I'm going to win the World Championship. And WCW probably would have gone in that direction. You couldn't count for anything. And while we do know that this pineapple went on to main event WrestleMania, there are a bunch of guys who just vanished into the abyss and we never really heard from them again. So my name is Simon Miller from What Culture Wrestling. Thank you very much for watching me. And this is 10 WCW wrestlers who vanished when the company died. Number 10, Dwayne Bruce. Clearly raised by Batman fans who wanted to take advantage of their last name, you will probably know Dwayne Bruce better as Sergeant Lee Parker. He was also the head of WCW's developmental school known as the Power Plant, and you may have seen him yelling at documentary maker Louis Theroux and making him throw up, or telling Batista that he was never going to make it in the wrestling business. I mean, talk about making a mistake. This is my mistake book. But yes, Sarge, as he was known, was very fond of the I will break you mentally technique, and it chased a lot of people away because they're like, man, I just want to learn to be a wrestler. Why are you trying to destroy my self-esteem? Maybe because of this too, there was no interest from WWE when WCW folded in 2011. And while he did wrestle on the independent scene a little bit, real recently, he started his own construction company. Well, I'm going to guess he's building buildings right now. I don't know what kind of construction company it is. Maybe he's making fences. Number 9, Crowbar. Crowbar, somewhat unkindly, was released from WCW mere days before it died. Surely we could have waited an extra week and let him deal with it like everybody else. Although he did get picked up by WWE for a little bit. He was on Velocity and he was on Heat. He was on SmackDown. Just sadly for the bar, these were all dark matches. After this, he would join World Wrestling All-Stars, but you can tell how long that promotion lasted, because he was both the first and the last hardcore champion, and that's not because he had a very long reign. The man behind Crowbar, though, was a smart cat because he had gone out there and got his physiotherapy degree, so he had something to fall back on, and while in 2004 he did do a little bit more wrestling, these days he set up a physio business with his wife, and I'm going to guess they're making a lot of money. You ever tried to have physiotherapy? That stuff ain't cheap. Number 8, Lashleroux. Former WCW Tag Team Champion alongside none other than Chavo Guerrero, as it turns out, Lashleroux is a really good artist. You can find his work on a lot of wrestling websites, and also when the WCW official magazine was around, he would draw a comic strip in that too. I just think that's quite cool. Drawing is really hard. He did get a developmental deal with WWE after WCW had died and was moved to HWA, but after a year of doing jack all, he decided, look, I'd like to wrestle, can I? And when they said no, where else did he go but TNA? Sadly, he suffered a really bad neck injury which forced him to retire in 2006. As far as I can tell, he never properly returned to the ring. And as of right now, he's a youth minister in a Baptist church, so it sounds like he's happy. Number 7, Air Paris. Air Paris debuted for WCW in March 2001, which meant he arrived in the company just as it was about to close. That doesn't sound very nice now, does it? On the very last episode of Thunder, though, he was teamed with a little-known person called AJ Styles, and they became Air Raid. And let's be honest, if World Championship Wrestling hadn't closed its doors, if they had actually realized the potential they had here, they probably would have gone on to smash it. All of this was too little too late for WWE to have any interest in, as AJ himself has talked about, because he has basically described his contract as like worth a pack of Skittles, and yet even then, he couldn't even get a phone call. And we all know what happened to him. He's become one of the biggest stars ever, but Air Paris took a very different route. He became so disillusioned with the wrestling business, he just walked out entirely. Until recently. After making it clear that him and his daughters were still huge fans of the wrestling business, he actually did turn up on Gallows and Anderson's Talker Shopper Mania pay-per-view weird thingy-majig. I don't think this means he's all of a sudden going to come back full-time, but as a cameo, nice to see him. Number 6, Kid Romeo. Do you know what Kid Romeo's gimmick was in WCW? He was a heel version of Ricky Martin. Yep, that's right. He even came out to a cover version of Cup of Life. That's really weird. His last action in World Championship Wrestling was to lose alongside partner Elix Skipper as they took on the phenomenal pairing of Billy Kidman and Rey Mysterio. And while all those three guys got an opportunity with WWE, nobody cared about Kid Romeo. He went down to Puerto Rico and wrestled for the WWEC, and he spent some time in Florida Championship Wrestling and even TNA. But given that he just kept being used as developmental talent, he thought, you know what? I am done. He retired in 2005 before a brief comeback in 2008, and given that in between those 2 years he was being an exterminator, I'm just going to assume he went back to doing that. Number 5, Mike Sanders. Do you remember what Mike Sanders' nickname was? It was above average Mike Sanders. So he's just better than normal. I was like, Mike, if you're going to go in, you may as well go all in. It just kind of makes you sound a little bit lame. During WCW, he was a cruiserweight champion and even the commissioner for a little while, because again, WCW would just do crazy things all of the time. And when they did die, he did get a call from WWE and he went down to HWA, their developmental territory. He also somehow pulled another power play because he wound up being the booker of that place after he'd injured his knee. So that guy just had the skills. He knew how to talk. He wound up in TNA like everybody else, with his last stint being in Ring of Glory in 2005. And when he was done with wrestling, do you know what he went and did? He became a stand-up comedian and he found quite a lot of success. Mike Sanders, you were way too hard on yourself when it came to that old nickname. Number 4, Kiwi. One of those names that makes you ashamed to be a wrestling fan. This feeling just got worse when you saw what the character was. In the same vein as somebody like Goldust, the idea here was to get booze as we played on stereotypes. Now, we shouldn't have been doing back then, and we shouldn't be doing it now. It's just not very nice, and it's just not very clever. The real-life Alan Funk was soon transferred across to WWE, but he didn't last there very long. And he then went to World Wrestling All-Stars, where he called himself the Funkster, which, yes, was a parody of Hulk Hogan. It all got worse when he joined TNA in 2002 and became the Miss TNA champion after stripping Taylor Vaughan. And I wonder who came up with that idea. He suffered a horrendous injury which left him deaf in one ear and required 4 surgeries before he returned in 2005. And since then, he has continued on this run, including some characters that is just taking the mick out of Lady Gaga. I have absolutely no idea. Number 3, Evan Karagias. What an interesting WCW run Evan had. I mean, he was a cruiserweight champion for a little while before his manager Medusa turned on him and beat him for that championship to become the first ever female cruiserweight champion. He then went on to be 1/3 of the Pretty Damn Awesome 3 count alongside Shane Helms and Shannon Moore. And if you've never seen these guys, you need to Google them right now. They were a wrestling boy band, or they were 3MB before we'd even heard of 3MB. Another one that did manage to make the jump, Evan then suffered a massive concussion which kept him out the ring for 9 months. Well, very sadly, WWE let him go. That didn't deter him though, because not only did he go on to make a decent living on the indie scene, but he also became a movie stuntman, including doing work on a low-budget Metal Gear Solid film. As far as I'm concerned, that makes him a damn hero. He has a wife and a family now, and he works in accounting. So good for him. Number 2, Lex Luger. When nobody was looking or noticed that Lex Luger's WWF contract had expired, he simply left the building. He turned up on WCW. Simultaneously, he was on both Raw and Nitro. And if you want to call this the first shot in the Monday Night Wars, you be my guest. Now, you'd be well within your rights to assume, oh, that's why Lex never went back to WWE. But that's not true. They did make him an offer, but he was so worried how he'd be used, given the way that he left, he, of course, went to TNA. From there, it is just a heartbreaking story as Luger's personal demons caught up with him. I mean, at the time, he was dating Miss Elizabeth, and she was found with cuts and bruises. And it certainly seemed like that was a domestic abuse attack. And weeks after that, they both overdosed on drugs, with Miss Elizabeth tragically passing away. Lex was arrested soon after and then suffered a spinal stroke in 2007, which left him in a wheelchair. And actually, in 2011, Lex Luger and WWE did start working together a little bit, with Lex telling younger kids, don't do what I did. It didn't work out very well. Number 1, Pamela Pullshock. Not gonna lie, I do not remember Pamela Pullshock, which shouldn't be too surprising because 20 years have passed. But in 1999, she was not only the host of WCW, but also a backstage interviewer. The following year, she even teamed with Canyon to take on the Bagwells. And right there in that sentence is more evidence and all you need to know about why WCW flippin' died. She must have seen the light because she left in 2000 to pursue a career as an actress, although going through her IMDb page does make for interesting reading, because it's like, young, attractive woman, hot, attractive girl. I kind of feel like she knew she was being typecast, so she left and she started a family. Her latest work came in 2018 when she starred in the movie Super Troopers 2, although sadly that one was uncredited. Know any other people that just vanished after WCW died? Make sure you let us know in the comments below, and then don't forget to like the video, share the video, and please do subscribe. It's looking at you and giving you a wink. Then you can head over to whatculture.com where you can read articles like this. You can watch more videos on the site, just click away. And do make sure you follow us on social media. Mine my sign for what culture? Every day I miss WCW because it was such a mess, and yet for some reason that made it appealing. Will it ever come back?